Welcome back to Stellaris Overexplained. I'm just gonna dive straight into things. Oh, they're about to finish their job, their commercial forms. Let's see what that does. So they get 37 production from this. For my planet, they're making 12 trade value and 3 amenities. So basically this merchant job right here. All right, they are asking for a defensive pact. Diplomatic pacts cost a monthly influence. Particularly, the more beneficial they are, the higher the cost is. So if you form a federation or defensive pact, that's gonna cost you a lot of influence. I mean, already I'm paying half a influence per month. If I were to pick this defensive pact, that would cost me even more. And what defensive pacts do? If someone attacks either of us, we both go to war with the attacker. But if I were to attack someone else, or they were to attack someone else, I'm not dragged into their offensive wars, only their defensive wars. If I decline, I can ask for it later. I would rather wait until I know that I have someone I'd actually expect to declare on me. So I'm going to decline. Let me see. They are a tundra preference, which I actually have a tundra world. And there's some stuff I could do. I could terraform this world. I don't have the technology yet, but eventually I could terraform it. Or I could genetically modify my pops to prefer that planet. Also, I'd need a tech for that. But the cheapest, quickest way to settle planets that you can't settle, instead of making your pops be able to live on that planet, either by changing the planet or your pops, you just get someone who naturally already likes to live on that planet. And this is why migration treaties can be very powerful. So I'm going to offer a migration treaty. You can see right here, this used to be red, uninhabitable, but now it's 80% because they prefer Tundra World. And if I look here, I go to my Starbase Shipyard colony ship. I can now produce colony ships with their pops. Though actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this planet and hit the colonize button, and then I'm going to build it. That's actually the way I prefer to do colonies, because this will be, when it finishes building, it'll automatically move and settle this planet. So it's a lot quicker. They don't like living on worlds that I like living on, so for the most part, there'll be a natural segregation because they prefer to live in cold regions and I prefer to live in warm regions. They'll live on the cold planets and fill out any planets that I can't otherwise colonize, and we'll live on the planets that we find comfortable. But if I were to meet another species that prefers continental worlds, then I'll have some mixed worlds in which I have some humans and some whatever the other alien species is, and that will give me migration from their empire. So I'll get an increased pop growth. So migration treaties are quite powerful to get planets up and running much faster, because the other methods to get otherwise uninhabitable planets are much later into the game or much more expensive. Because, I mean, terraforming costs thousands of, like 5,000 energy credits a planet, which, you know, I could only terraform like 2 planets right now if I could have the technology. Genetic modification costs a significant amount of society research. So both of those options are really expensive. So it's much better. Migration treaties are the cheapest and, to my knowledge, the cheapest and most efficient way of getting worlds. And this is why I really love playing Xenophile, because of trade value is very powerful, particularly combined with consumer goods. Diplomacy is really powerful, and migration treaties are really powerful. So you can really just snowball insanely by, you're never having to go to war, so there's no drain on your resources. You can put 100% of your resources back into making more resources. So one thing I like to do whenever I establish communications with an empire is go to offer trade deal and then ask for communications. This number in the middle is still 0. If I were to say ask for energy credits, you'll see that this number will start to decrease, which means that they value whatever it is on this side. So if this communications remains 0, that means they don't know anyone other than me. Like, I already know everyone that they know, so they have no value to offer here with the communications. What I already expected, there's no empires over here or over here, or they're blocked off in some way and they haven't met anyone else. But if they do have a negative number, then you can either give them your communications, which will give you a slight positive value, or you can just slap some energy down. I mean, this would be a really minor cost, and that way you can establish communications with other empires. If they do happen to know someone else, you'll know whoever they know, You'll get that influence immediately, and you'll skip the whole first contact window. So I like to do that. I really like ion thrusters. If your ships are not present for a battle, they cannot win that battle. That is my philosophy. Faster ships is ideal because that way it's easier to respond to threats. Otherwise, you could wait for like literally 6 years before your ships actually show up where you need them to show up. 100% of the research available to me is military technology, so I have to pick military technology anyways. These ion thrusters are locked in. I will definitely get these whenever I need to. The question is there any other technologies that are more valuable to get right now and then save this for a later time? Increasing your shields costs a lot of power, so you have to wait until you have better reactors. But armor does not cost power, so it improves the durability of your ships. For alloy cost, it makes your ships more expensive. So this is a good pick because I can actually put this on my ships right away. I think I'm going to go for the armor, and then if I have bad picks next time, then I'll go for the thruster. Oh, and I have another election underway. The candidate support is no longer 25, 25, 25. Each faction is actually led by one of your leaders. They are taking this support that is generated from your pops, and a resident pop would produce less support than a citizen pop, but since all of my pops are citizens, it's just how many pops are associated with this faction, basically. So my current leader, which is the person I started the game with, has a little less support because the faction's a little bit smaller. But that faction support is adding to their chance to get elected. And these two independent factions don't have a faction with them, so they're much less likely to get voted in. When your empire head is the leader of a faction, the ethic of the faction also gets additional ethics attraction. So ideally you don't want the head of a faction that you don't like to be elected as the leader of your empire, as that will make that faction much harder to keep in check. So if I were to have like a spiritualist leader be elected as my main ruler, that spiritualist faction will be much harder to stop because spiritualism will be much more prevalent within my empire. The noises, a mixture of threatening, booming noises and what sounds like grinding of metal on metal, continued unabated for several minutes, punctuated occasionally by a howling noise that sent a chill through everyone who heard it. Just as Envoy Amir thought the noises had died down, they started up again, louder than before. With a wince, he switched the receiver off. He turned to the gathered crowd of officers, some of whom were cowering behind their seats. "Well, that was quite something," he said weakly. It was hard to imagine that a species making the noises we had picked up from the screamers could be anything other than hostile. Naval officers already fear the worst and assume we will soon be at war with them. But calmer heads suggest we'd be better off waiting and seeing. They cannot help how they sound. We will come to understand them later, which will reduce my happiness, but make the first contact easier. Or it is a challenge to send threatening noises back, but I have no idea what will happen. Or we must prepare for the inevitable, and we will get militarist ethics attraction and ship build speed. I'm not building any ships because I've maxed out my naval capacity. I think I'm just going to do challenge not return so that I can get this first contact done earlier. Ah, yes, the grimacing event. It basically, there's a 50% chance, a supposedly 50% chance to stabilize the planet and get a planet out of this. But I've done this event like 50 times. In only one of those times have I actually gotten this to do anything. Otherwise, this always fails. But yet again, here I am spending 200 energy credits with a dream. See, it failed. It failed. Every time it fails. Alright, the shardlings have settled Alcor system. Currently this guy's trapped in this pocket here because there's hostiles kind of all around him. So if this happens where a ship gets tracked, you can press this return button, and if they have no valid route to get back to your territory, they'll basically go missing in action, like what happens when someone damages your ship or whatever. But I'd like to get the Alcor, start going down this direction and maybe get some of these systems. So I have two options. I could either go ahead and just start on the crystalline pacification, which takes 63 months. So that's a sizable chunk of time. But these shardlings are weaker than my military ships, so I'm just going to do this militarily. And so we begin to pick up more and more visual images of the aliens known as the Screamers. It was inevitable that these would eventually be leaked to the wider public. Their appearance has proven to be delightful to the United Nations of Earth public, who are now impatient to make closer acquaintance with these aliens. So these aliens make the most horrible terrifying sounds ever, but we think they're super attractive. Interesting. Let's see what they look like. Oh, these rock things. Okay. Yeah, cool. Tokugawa has reached 10 pops, which means I can upgrade my reassembled chip center into a planetary administration. Because you have 2 specialists, that the 2 of these colonists are considered specialists, almost always when you do this upgrade, there'll be 1 specialist that's unemployed. I really am annoyed whenever this happens. I wish they'd fix it. But what essentially happens, I think, is that one of the workers rushes up to fill these jobs before the specialist rushes up to fill the jobs, and it leaves you with a unemployed specialist. And unemployed specialists, or rulers, if you have rulers, will take a long time before they drop a tier. Jobs will jump up tiers really quick, but they will take a long time to drop a tier. We have managed to decipher enough of the language used by the civilization we now know to be the Empire of Anon Fashin to open communications with them and make sense of their earlier broadcast. It seems that the Cruel are a warlike society who greeted us with their most fearsome war cry, apparently to test our mettle. Unfortunately, our caution in translating their language meant that their challenge went unanswered, leading them to the conclusion that we are a civilization of cowards. It will take quite some time for us to live down this first impression. It matters not. So they have a reduced opinion of us.
An alien nation is hailing us.
They are militarist and fanatic spiritualist. Despite the rough start, I do think we'll be able to make these our friends. So I am going to go the route of we are delighted to meet you and basically counter that disbenefit. I'm going to assign 2 envoys to improve relations with them. What I am going to do right away is go to communications, and as you can see, this is -6, so they actually know quite a few people. And I'll go ahead and give them my communications to slightly drop this price. Though what I can do, if I'd like to get the friendliness with this empire even faster. So the reason they value food so much, it's kind of a little bit of an exploit. AI look at their resources income, and if they make a lot of income of something, they don't want it. So let me just to show you, if I go minerals, for only like 1,000 food, I got 100 trade acceptance, but that's only 50 because they're a lithoid species. They're already getting a bunch of bonuses to making minerals because they're literally made out of rock. But food, they don't need a food upkeep. So they have literally no food within their empire. So despite having no purpose to have food, the AI are like, I have none of this, so I really value it. So it's kind of a little bit of an exploit to the AI's logic. And the reason I'm putting this up to 100 is that up to a max of 100, you can get a opinion boost for giving them basically a gift. And it will decay pretty quickly over time, but this is very useful to bump up their opinion high enough to get your first agreements, and then you can use trust to hold on to that opinion. So I like doing this nice and early, something like this. I'm willing to sacrifice this amount of food. It's very cheap for me, and having more friends is very much worth it. Going to war would be far more expensive than just giving them some food. All right, and now I've made contact with a lot of people. These guys are militarist materialists. Delighted to meet you. Interesting. This is egalitarian spiritualist. Delighted to meet you. Interesting. And this is a hive mind. Delighted to meet you. Interesting. They are willing to establish an embassy already because of that gift I gave them. And they're pretty close to accepting some different pacts. What I can do is I can ask for some favors. And I'm going to send them some food for some favors.
We are being hailed.
They accepted that. So now they owe me favors, and you can use favors to force a pact. So I'd like to get a commercial pact would probably be good. Let's use 3 favors, and that can increase the acceptance of the deal. So I'll use 3 favors for that, and research agreement, I'll use 4 favors for that. So hopefully that will be good. Oh, and my ships are fighting the crystals. I should probably look at that.
Situation log has been updated.
More envoys, yes. So I did lose 1 ship fighting that, but I think that's worth it. So now I know where they're kind of a little bit of a squiggly empire up here because they've been blocked off by these alien vessels, so that's nice. But now I have some research packs. They are superior technology and economy to me. Oh, and this, while Amoria Station is complete, I will go ahead and put at least one trade hub here. Horizon is starting to collect quite a bit of trade value that I'd like to collect. So I'm going to put a starbase down in the Ukrichi system so that I can collect both the trade value from these two planets over here. Hive mines, you can't get commercial packs with hive mines, so it's less important for me to try and be friends with them. Authorities, if you have the same authority, so if I find other democracies, I'll have an automatic opinion boost. That's why these are already cordial, whereas these are a empire, so we actually get a disbenefit to relations. I definitely want to be friends with the Bellicomosa Blessed Council. I already have pacts with the company up here, so I don't really need to continue improving relations. So I'm going to move the envoy and shift it over to the Blessed Council. Oh, so once you've started to meet some other empires, like maybe I would say probably the rule of thumb would be once you've made first contact with your first empire, this would probably be the time you'd make that decision. But you could do it a little later, like I am, once I've already established a couple of neighbors. So in your policies, there's diplomatic stance, and initially you always start out on expansionist. Outposts cost less to build and your colonies develop faster, which is pretty nice for getting your economy up and running and expanding really quick. It increases border friction a lot. And basically how border friction works is when you actually have a star where the hyperlanes actually connect up with another empire. So right now I don't actually have any border friction at all. And that'll do a decrease in relations, representative of conflict over having no room to continue to expand in that direction. So empires that are right near each other are contested over territory that they wish they could have gotten. So the more you share borders with someone, the harder it is to maintain good relations. And then neighbors map mode, I don't have any neighbors yet. Neighbors map mode is useful for finding out where your border friction is coming from. You can reduce border friction by switching over to cooperative. What I'm thinking is I'm going to switch over to cooperative because this increases my diplomatic weight, which right now doesn't really do a whole lot for me. But when the galactic community forms, that means I'll be able to have more sway in the votes, which will be great. This also means that when my envoys go to improve relations, I do it better, more effectively. Though this does make spying harder, and it makes it harder to form rivalries, which helps me gain influence. But as it stands, I'm probably the next tradition pick. I'm going to go for diplomacy because that allows you to reduce the influence upkeep of pacts. Anyhow, so I'm going to switch over to cooperative. There's a trade routes map mode, and you can see that my new starbase that I just made, there's a trade route between the two, and this allows you to see piracy that's happening along this trade route, which I'll need to deal with pretty soon. But trade value goes along these routes, and then you can also see where trades is being collected from, and also the trade protection that you get from your different starbases. So this is really good for managing trade value. I have met my first primitives. Ooh, and they're on like Gaia world. That's nice. I'm gonna start working on getting an observation post here so that I can uplift this this species and maybe eventually integrate them into my empire. All right. Bellicomosa Blessed Council can now use the subjugation casus belli against us. So casus belli are basically war goals. You can't declare war without some kind of goals. So like right now I can't declare war on them, but what they can do is they can declare war on me to make me a subject of them. And the reason for that is because they have a superior fleet power. Anyone that's superior has that war goal automatically on anyone inferior to them. So if I can go into contacts, I can sort by relative power. The Empire and the Blessed Council both have a superior relative power because they have a bigger fleet than me, and this one has a much bigger fleet than me. Just because they have a reason for war doesn't mean they're going to do that. Because we're friends with everyone, it's very unlikely that any of these AI will decide to declare war on me until they get suspicious or hostile, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I'm going to select the diplomacy tree. for the main reason of diplomatic influence cost reduced by 50%. Interstellar fleet traditions is a great technology to get. This naval logistics office means that every anchorage you have gives you more fleet capacity, which means that you can make a starbase dedicated to all anchorages and get a lot of fleet capacity from that. So I really do like this technology. We have found beings far surpassing anything encountered in our Empire's spacefaring history, life capable of growing to an unprecedented scale, rivaling moons in size and mass. Nothing could have prepared us for this. This day will forever mark a turning point in the story of the United Nations of Earth. Let us hope we survive long enough to tell it. It is awe-inspiring. So here, in this system, there is a Stellarite Devourer. So this is part of the Leviathans pack or something like that. Is a very dangerous late game thing to deal with. It's out of the way, so I'm okay. It doesn't block any choke points or anything annoying like that.
Red alert. Spaceport under fire.
This basically happens when you have a trade route that doesn't have enough protection on it. But that's fine. I have a fleet that I will send to deal with them. And then now I have my first Ascension perk. Technological Ascendancy, just a 10% research speed and makes rare technologies more likely. It's a pretty good pick. It's very basic. It's not exciting, but it's very useful. So I'm going to go Technological Ascendancy first. And I have managed to make... There are so many militarists in this galaxy. Wow. But yeah, sure. I guess that's fine. Another Empire. And they're wary of us at the moment, but I should be able to turn that around. I'll go ahead and go for a commercial pact and research pact with them. Again, my play is to not engage in conflicts. Editing Cedar here. I love the irony of saying that a second before engaging with pirates. Dealt with them very easily. Took only one casualty, so that's fine. And then they do have a little station.
Hostile station. Research concluded.
And then got a little bit of energy and minerals. Pretty much just pays for the damages that they did. Alright, I'm going to call the episode there. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching. And if I finish the next episode, you should see it on screen about now. Alright, bye.